got some great news for you. I was like, oh, she did show up in town. I got excited.
Laura's sons immediately start searching all over Vancouver for her.
Me and my wife drove around for 2 hours to every business that was open, showing pictures of my mom, asking if anybody had seen her. So as I've gone on, and he's like, well, it's my birthday, so hopefully she answers.
Laura never answered that call, and detectives realized that she was never in Vancouver. It's been 18 days since Laura Johnson disappeared, and her son Stephen decides he has to take action.
Being all the way in Washington, I wasn't going to get an answer. That was the next logical step, was to go to Montana.
I cut this much
I'm
off.
not just going to sit here.
I couldn't let him go alone. They said to themselves, we're going to...
Is, as long as I didn't break the law,
Hey, glue.
I could do anything. I had inclinations about who the person Greg was, and none of that ever sat right with me.
Stephen calls Greg, looking for more details about the last time he saw his mother.
He picked up, it was him. You know, who are you? What is this? Hangs up the phone. So I went to his house. I was yelling my mom's name. I'm yelling Laura. I'm yelling Mom. I think that she's in there. And then that's when he lets the dogs out. So I go up to the dogs, and they're loud, but they're not dangerous at all. So I just bent down and started petting the dog, you know. That's when he came out of the trailer with a cigarette, and he's, you know, can I help you? And I told him, I was like, I'm Stephen Johnson. Like, Laura's my mother. I believe you know where she is, and I would like you to tell me. And he's like, no, I came home, and she was gone. He's very cocky. He's just standing there smoking his cigarette. So I told him, I believe you know where my mother is. I will be the one to put you behind bars, and I'll be the end of you. So he tells me to leave, and he calls the cops on me.
October 1st, 2018. Stephen Johnson has driven from his home in Vancouver, Washington to Billings, Montana to try to find his missing mother, Laura. After a disturbing encounter with Laura's boyfriend, Greg Green, Stephen's next step is to create flyers and post them all over Billings.
When we went anywhere, we handed these out. So we went to Greg's work, and we put them all over his window at work, and then tore them all off.
We were like texting, we're like, all right, has anybody heard? Anybody heard? Like, we want to know, like, what's going on?
We woke up 8 o'clock every single morning with a place to go to, an idea in mind, with somebody to talk to just try to find something. So at the end of every day, I'm calling my brothers, telling them, here's what we did. Here's who we talked to.
It was very frustrating, because this is like what you see on TV. I never thought in my life I would ever go through it.
One of the hardest things for me was dealing with frustrations with the family, understanding their concerns, understanding their desire to have, you know, swift justice.
We can't just go to Mr. Green's residence and knock the door in and...
Everything comes up empty. We had gone through every single day. We had been through all of Greg's neighbors with no answer, with no solution. We were nowhere closer on day 5 than we were on day 1. And the last thing before we leave town that we figure we can do is go knock on the neighbors' houses again.
As As they are knocking on the door of the neighbor across the street from Greg, Stephen sees something he hadn't noticed before.
I basically stop and I say, hey, I think we found something. There's a camera at the one place that we're interested in.
It points right at the driveway of where Greg and Laura lived.
Stephen and Casey had talked to the owner a few days before. Now, they ring his doorbell again, hoping to get access to the footage.
The first thing he says is, do you want to see? And I said, what are you talking about? And he goes, I have my camera footage pulled up because you were asking me about your mom. He invites me in, and for the next 35 minutes, I'm just on his floor, looking at a bunch of video. So, first thing we pull up is September 13th, the last day she went to work. And then Casey is recording it on her phone.
You can speed it up.
So we're going through. So we're watching the camera footage. And this is where it gets very interesting.
10. Right here.
Keep playing.
What happens is Greg gets home first. Greg gets home and parks his truck and goes inside. And 35 minutes later,
Right here. Oh!
my mom gets home.
Right there.
No. So it's mom.
Blonde hair.
It is 7:07 on September 13th. That's her. That's her going into the house. We were told time and time again that Greg's story is, I came home and she was gone. I came home and she was gone. She had taken all of her stuff and it was gone. So, we got him. He was lying. But, well, where is she? So we're watching the footage. Day turns to night.
What time is it?
Right now,
11:27? 10:27?
10:27.
There he is. The headlamp?
Headlamp on. We see Greg throughout the entire night. Right here, right here.
Yeah.
It's gonna look like he's dragging something. Back. Just moving. Going back and forth between the house.
That's when we call the detectives, like, you need to come see this.
Stephen Johnson has discovered home security footage of his missing mother, Laura. It shows her at the house she shared with Greg Green after the time Greg told police she had left. Realizing the importance of the discovery, he calls the police.
Approximately 10:45 that night, I go to that neighbor's house and we watch the footage in question. We then start viewing the video in greater detail, and it was definitely very concerning.
The detective's trained eye spots something that Stephen and Casey missed.
The footage shows the area of the driveway where Laura Johnson is observed coming home that evening, and she's exiting the vehicle and walking towards the trailer. Gregory is also seen going back into the garage and coming out with 2 red-colored suitcases in that vehicle as well.
The same 2 red suitcases that Greg told officers that Laura had taken with her when she moved out. And then, the detective sees something that changes the investigation from a missing persons case to something much more disturbing.
And you can see him walking out with that large, heavy object. That's zoomed in to show that area of the vehicle where he puts what we believe is Laura's body into the vehicle. And then ultimately he's observed putting a shovel in the back of the pickup bed before he leaves that evening, just after 7 p.m. We believe that more than likely that is her body, but we need a lot more evidence to prove that at this point. That was kind of a gut-wrenching feeling to know that you just observed somebody's last moments.
What the hell did we just watch? The only logical answer is, Greg ended my mother's life that night. And finally dawns on me that after all of this, that I'll probably never get to see my mom again. Is that I'll never get another goodbye. I'll never get that closure. I'll never get the last I love you. I'll never get any of it. It's just gone.
But unless police can prove that it is Laura's body on the video,
Like, this guy did all of this, and we could just see right through him.
We work closely with the county attorney's office and trying to determine, what more we need to get to that point to make an arrest. I had to remain focused on what needed to be done to build a case against him.
While the forensics team examines Greg's seized work truck, detectives have a strategy to keep an eye on Greg.
One of the last things we did when we searched the residence is we placed a tracker on his vehicle. We believe that he did more than likely take Laura's body to some location to bury her. We placed the tracker on with the hope that he might go back out to the location.
The tracker is placed on Greg's personal car, the same one that Laura is seen driving on surveillance video on September 13th. On October 5th, hours after his interview with detectives, Greg Green starts to move.
And at approximately 10 p.m. that evening, his vehicle started to move towards the interstate, headed west outside of Billings. So we began to follow him. He drove straight through the night, and we realized that he was leaving the state.
October 5th, 2018. Greg Green is the prime suspect in the presumed murder of Laura Johnson. Lacking evidence of a crime, detectives have to let Greg walk free. But they have placed a tracker on his car, and he appears to be leaving Billings, Montana in a hurry.
His vehicle started to move towards the interstate and headed west outside of Billings.
Detectives track Greg as he drives for 16 hours across 5 states to his old hometown in Henderson, Nevada.
If you're being interviewed by police about the whereabouts of your ex-girlfriend and you just hightail it out of town, it's not a good look.
We were coordinating with law enforcement where he was at. They knew that we were tracking him. They would do drive-bys, make sure that they knew his whereabouts.
Meanwhile, Billings police police continue the search for evidence to arrest Greg. Using his cell phone data, they track Greg's movements during the night of September 13th, which leads them to the local Walmart.
We were able to locate footage of him going to Walmart that evening, and when he went through the self-checkout, we did see a very distinct abrasion on his face, which we thought was very suspicious at that point.
Then, another crucial piece of evidence emerges from the forensic search of Greg's impounded work truck.
I noticed that the vehicle was very clean. It had been washed recently. So after 2 days processing that vehicle for biological material, taking swabs from various locations on the seat, we found 3 very, very small 1 to 2 millimeter stains that appeared to be blood.
That evidence came back from the crime lab, and sure enough, it was Laura's blood.
The totality of all of the evidence that we had located, including the blood on the door of that truck, and together with video footage showing him carrying out what we believed was Laura's body, at that point there was enough evidence to arrest him.
Hey, Greg. I remember you. You remember us? So you know why we're here?
I imagine so, yes.
Okay. So,
When you change for something like this, or
well, we had a warrant for your arrest for deliberate homicide, so that's what's changed. That's why you're here and handcuffs,
okay,
and you'll be expected back to Billings
huh?
for deliberate homicide.
Deliberate homicide. Deliberate homicide.
If you want to tell us what happened with her when she came home that night and what you did with her, that's your decision. I'm not going to press you. That's what I want to know.
I did everything that I know already.
Okay. Well, we both know that's not true. So if you don't want to talk to me, we'll end that there. Okay.
After being held for 7 months in a Nevada jail, Greg is extradited to Billings. More than a year later, in February 2020, his trial is set to begin. But without Laura Johnson's body, a conviction is far from a sure thing.
We had a theory of what we believed happened, but we just didn't have a body. This is the very first case that I've ever had that involves a no-body homicide arrest. When you're trying to convict somebody of a deliberate homicide and you don't have a body to go along with that, it can be very stressful.
What is your evidence